Hey there, thanks for joining me. Kiwi Codger here with episode 7 of the Musket Wars, entitled 1818, The Bay of Plenty Ravaged. The Musket Wars, episode 6, finished with the missionaries arriving at Hawaii and the first Christian service being performed there on Christmas Day, 1814. Marsden returned to Sydney, leaving the lay missionaries to establish themselves and start spreading the gospel. With the death of Ruatara, the mission comes under the protection of Hongi Hika, the most powerful chief in the bay. Let us now jump forward 3 years to January 1818. What has happened over the last 3 years? Well, the intertribal wars between different hapu of Ngapuhi are petering out and accommodations are being entered into. The Ngapuhi have established large cultivations and piggeries to supply visiting ships and get paid in muskets, powder and shot. The potato crop allows men to be away for long periods. There's no tapu exists around planting potatoes as it does for kumara. And lastly, because of the mission station and Hongi's protection, visiting ships feel safe in the bay and get everything they need to restock, and thus don't venture further into New Zealand. Hence, muskets are concentrated in Ngapuhi's hands. In 1818, the Bay of Islands has two main chiefs, Hongi Hika, whose rohe, or area of control, was the northern part of the bay down to Kerikeri and inland to Waimate. The other was Te Morenga, whose rohe was around the Taiamai area. These two chiefs saw each other as rivals, and little love was lost between the two. In January 1818, Te Morenga was about to set off on a major campaign against the tribes of the Bay of Plenty. He met with Hongi and requested assurance that Taiamai hapu would not be attacked in his absence, and this was given. Te Morenga left the bay with 400 warriors and a large fleet in late January. It's believed he had about 35 muskets with him. A month later, Hongi and his men leave the Bay of Islands, heading first to Thames, where they were joined by the Ngāti Maru warriors, and this joint force of over 900 warriors sets off for the same killing grounds as Te Morenga, that is, the Bay of Islands. The Bay of Plenty. Surprisingly, Hongi and Te Morenga's paths never cross whilst they independently lay waste to the Maori in the Bay of Plenty. Places where this destruction is known to have occurred are Mautiti Island, Makatu, Whakatane and Te Teko, Maranui and around Te Hicks Bay. Hundreds, maybe thousands were attacked and killed. The attacking Ngapuhi suffered only minor setbacks. Both attacking forces returned separately to the Bay of Islands in January 1919, having been gone for 12 months. They returned with hundreds of slaves and canoes full of preserved heads. From Ron Crosby's book, Musket Wars, we have the following paragraph. The missionary records of this time recount the horror that followed the return of both these taua to the Bay of Islands. Many of the slaves were killed for cannibal feasts, and heads decorated the palisades of many of the pa around the bay. Many of the slaves who survived were not able to return home for 15 or 20 years, until the influence of Christianity led to their release. Many of the women, of course, were forcibly taken as wives by the northern men. Now, let's just consider this. These two war parties have been away for a whole year. The raiding parties would have survived on captured crops, pigs, and consuming those enemies killed in battle or taken captive. Both for the attackers and offenders, it was now obvious that the poo, or musket, was the master of warfare, and their acquisition would be all-consuming. The economics of warfare were apparent to Ngapuhi. Slaves meant more workers in the field and piggeries. Captured canoes were needed to transport slaves back. These canoes meant greater fleets and war parties for the future. Whalers would pay good money for preserved heads. Defeating your enemy satisfied any revenge outstanding and allowed the tribe's young men to prove themselves and gain status. If muskets guaranteed you victory over an unsuspecting enemy, then it was important to exploit this advantage. The musket wars would reach new heights over the coming years, and Ngapuhi, with Ngapuhi leading the onslaught. So this brings us to the end of episode 7. Episode 8 will be regarding Hongi Hika going to England, and on his return he will bring back hundreds of muskets. Things would get desperate for other tribes in New Zealand very quickly. Thanks for this, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.